Trinity Sunday. It's the Sunday when rectors, if they have an associate rector or a seminarian, give them this Sunday to preach. Because the Trinity, it's complicated. There are those for whom the colic of the day is the way they see things, the sort of clunky, awkward language of, in your glorious Trinity, we still worship the unity. The unity? Who speaks like that normally? Only theologians. But that's okay. It's trying to drive home the point that the church from the 2nd century to now has embraced this theological perspective as paramount to our understanding of God as both one and yet somehow three. There are also those, like our Unitarian siblings, who are like, yeah, Jesus is Messiah, but, you can also have one God, one person, and still have Christianity. A lot of people disagree with that, but that's another perspective you can take, which also makes sense and is actually baseable in Scripture. But instead of just articulating the doctrine of how it's right or wrong, I want to pull something out. So when I was in college, I read this passage in Genesis, which, by the way, bravo to Chip. That was a long. Yeah. You say that now. So when I'm very much involved in my Southern Baptist mindset, and I see, let us create humankind in our image. I'm like, the Trinity was in Genesis all along. Nope. It turns out that the us is sort of the royal we, in a sense, because God was in the heavenly court. There's sort of heavenly throne room with all these agents and people like the Satan, the adversary, or Satan as we describe it, was part of the heavenly court. He had a role to fulfill. Things evolve over time. It's very interesting. But no, it's talking about in the royal we way, let us create this. We decree that this is the rule of the land, so to speak. Now, I was kind of deflated when I found that out. But now I'm like, it's kind of neat. It shows the evolution of thought. Anyhow. But one of the things that I find interesting in this is that God, who is one, is perfect, right? All the summation of everything in the world. And he created humanity, male and female, he created them. He created them? Then I think about my professor that same semester in college in my intro to religion class saying, if God is fully God and we are created in God's image, male and female, how can God be a he? Because then there'd have to be a Mrs. God, wouldn't there? Some would argue that there was a Mrs. God that got squished out over time, but that's beside the point. I want to look at that. If male and female is the full image of God, then how do we understand what it means to have our identities? Not only as the binary that we have been taught to believe, but as most cultures actually in human history have understood it, to be a spectrum. Chip, have you ever shown your feminine side? I'm kidding, you don't have to. But would you argue that, at least potentially, we all have our feminine side as men? And ladies, have you ever had your moment where you feel like, I'm gonna take on sort of the stereotype of the man? No. The funny thing is, we actually flip the stereotypes of gender a lot in our dynamic. I am the soft and just make me feel good. She's like, let's get this done. Come on. And it's pretty funny. She's giving me more backbone. I've mellowed her out. It's a lovely combination. But again, if that's the case, then it's not so clear-cut then, is it? I won't go into details, but even our anatomy as beings are mirror images of one another. It's only with the Y chromosome that we move from female to male, and some people end up kind of in between. Well, wait a minute. If that's the case, then every expression of sex and gender among humanity is part of the spectrum of the fullness of God's creation by that logic. Okay, now we're getting uncomfortable and squirmy a little bit because we're having to kind of look at some of the assumptions that we have about what it means to be a beloved child of God. We're in a difficult spot right now in the world. Because it's easy to scapegoat people we don't understand. And this is a tale as old as time with humanity. Oh, you don't look like us. You don't think like us. You don't identify like us. Therefore, you are not okay. Or you don't accept who I am, so I'm going to shut you out completely. Anytime any of God's children, which, as we've established, is everybody, right? Is everybody, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Whether or not we understand them, whether or not we agree with them, is immaterial to the fact that they have human dignity that God alone gives them, gives us. To scapegoat, to demonize, and to undermine, to persecute, to bully, to beat, to murder, to try to extinguish is never okay. And what's challenging right now is that there are some with a cynical perspective who are targeting particularly the LGBTQ community, particularly the trans community. Now, trying to understand gender spectrum and sex and the difference between those two is a mind-boggling experience, even if you're open to it. I don't expect most people to understand that fluidity in the way that we have mostly been taught, that it's like very strict gender roles, you follow those roles, you get into those roles, and you live by them. And I don't want to take away worldviews of people that don't agree that it should be anything different from that. But it's our responsibility as children of God to ensure that we remember that regardless of our agreement or disagreement with other people's perspectives, identities, ways of being in the world, we are called to love them. We are called to protect them. We are called to stand beside them, loving our neighbors as ourselves. And that's the interesting thing even about the theology of the Trinity. I mean, Jonathan and I were talking last night about how quantum physics actually gives a great metaphor for the Trinity, because light is both particle and wave at the same time. Science and God coming together once again. So if it's multiples in one, that multiplicity, that breadth, that ambiguity, that sort of squishy, squirmy, in-between phase is something that actually comes from the source of all that is, seen and unseen, God. So this Trinity Sunday, my hope for us, particularly as Episcopalians, because of the broad tent that we hold, we make room for all people. We don't always agree. We don't always like each other. But we care for each other because we are a part of this family together. Our calling, if we're going to hold to a Trinitarian understanding of God's unity in the three persons, means that God is constantly asking us to evolve our understanding of what unity in personhood looks like, and to ensure that all God's children come to the table, including those who are the persecutors, including those who are the bullies, but not making peace with that oppression. There is no peace with that. So we have a responsibility now, regardless of where we stand theologically, politically, culturally, whether you agree with someone's lifestyle, whether you understand the way they understand themselves, how do we ensure that everyone is safe to feel the love of God? And it's our responsibility to go out into the world to ensure that we give love and support, particularly to those who are in danger, who feel unsafe, and who are family. After all, yesterday, 2 of the ordinands at the cathedral that I helped lay hands on, one was a lesbian and one is transgender. They are part of our clergy, they are part of our church community, they are part of our family, and they are beloved children of God, as they are. Beyond LGBTQ, any other group of people that are hard to understand, or that we don't quite understand how that works, it's important to make sure that we make more room for that. It doesn't always mean that things are going to be easy, but it is what we are called to do. So may we, as St. Anne's, make a bold witness simply by loving everyone, by allying with everyone, and ensuring that everyone is welcome at our table, which you already are anyway. That's one of the things I love about the church. But being that witness in a world that right now is edging closer and closer to the point of trying to target and scapegoat small groups of people that are misunderstood or disrespected. May we follow our mysterious God into the full embrasure of all that is. Amen.